Well, hello. Hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Friday in the Riv. And I guess we got an announcement about we are having a guest on Monday, CJ.
Yes, we are. Monday, we have a candidate for city council, which has confirmed that they will be on our show on Monday. I want to be sure I get the name accurate. It's Paulo Amaral. Okay. And he will be on Monday at 10 o'clock. So if we have any brief announcements to make, we will make them and then we will bring them right into the show like we did with Sam Sutter. And the candidate dictates how long he wants to be on the air. So we'll be able to get some questions. We can also get some questions via comments on Facebook because we can see them right here. And if you have a question to ask, we'll be more than happy to ask the candidate the question that you pose, and we will give your name unless you ask us not to. But then again, if you post a question on Facebook, everyone's going to see it. So
That's true. That's true. Yeah, and let me make let's reiterate for some of uh, our viewers. Sam Sutter was not on here fundamentally uh, for us to give him questions about his candidacy. He was there to respond to an allegation
right,
made by someone else. So this is a different. This will be a different scenario when we bring. If Sam Sutter wants to come on, if Paul Coogan wants to come on, if Mr. Vandal wants to come on, all the candidates, school committee or city council, are welcome to come on the show. Obviously, we do this remotely now. They will need a computer and the ability to link up. If not, we'll have to make other arrangements. But we offer this opportunity to speak to you, to everyone, not just the candidates that we are going to vote for. Yes, everybody has the opportunity to come on the show, and there will be questions, not softball questions, questions with validity, because there are a lot of issues in the city of Fall River going on, and we know that, and we have made it clear that we're not happy with this council just spending money and ignoring crime, ignoring education, ignoring all the things that are happening in Fall River. So if an incumbent comes on, we will hold their feet to the fire, and if a candidate comes on, I can guarantee you there will be questions about what their position is on how they're going to handle this and how they're going to handle the financial condition of the city. So with that. That's basically it. So I look forward to having Paulo on Monday. I did have a conversation with him a while back. He called me, and we had a brief conversation, not anything in depth. So I'm going to be looking forward to having him on so we can ask him what he's going to do differently for the betterment of the people of Fall River.
well, and that's what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be representing the people. And when our candidates and incumbents learn that they are not to inflect their own opinion, which is what the current city council does, reflects the opinion of the mayor instead of the opinion of the people, that's what gets to be a problem. Now, you and I both know that Fall River has become a dumping ground for many a people, many a thing. Now it's becoming the dumping ground for Boston residents or Boston area residents because the city now has over 2,000 market rate housing units, either constructed, in construction, or planned. Over 2,000. And that's going to bring people down from the Boston, supposedly, this is what they're hoping for, is going to bring people down from the Boston area to live because the rents in Fall River are cheaper than they are in Boston and Quincy. For instance,
Not much.
no, for instance, a one-bedroom apartment in Fall River is now averaging at $1,495 a month. Meanwhile, in Quincy, it's averaging at a little over $2,000 a month.
Well, it's very, very interesting how they make these spin. This is the biggest spin job in the history of the world, and we know that the sterile news is the propaganda arm, the print propaganda arm of the mayor and of Kenny Fiola. This article, and I will read the headline here from the Fall River Herald News. Fall River real estate boom, over 2,000 market rate housings are in the pipeline. Now, I'm going to show you how you can just completely distort reality. Number one, let me start out. People from Boston are not going to come down here. Not with a crime rate at number one. And at the end of this article, they talk about Tony Cadero talking about, oh, he can't keep up with it. Nobody said that most of the people that are in his place down at Duval Street are from the War College. They're not going to be permanent residents of Fall River. They're not going to contribute to the economy of Fall River. They're not going to school their kids in Fall River. And they spend very little time in Fall River because they're at the War College and they'll be replaced by another class. So this is the con. Now, I'm reading this verbatim, and you can go and read it. The national housing crisis is in the news daily, but a look at the new pending construction shows a boom in market rate housing construction in Fall River, with thousands of new units in the pipeline. Okay, let's, rather than read that garbage, which implies that we're not suffering from the national housing crisis, and really look at it. These units are creating a housing crisis in Fall River. The national housing crisis that Jo Goode is speaking about is a national affordable housing crisis. And when you look at it on the news, they say that. The governor of this state said affordable. You can get an apartment. You got a lot of money, you can get an apartment anyway. You can stay living in Boston. Tony Cadero can live anywhere he wants. And so can Kenny Fiola and Paul Coogan. This is not about the people in Fall River. This is about this article shows you that they don't care about you. And then it goes on, it said nobody's going to be displaced. We already know people are going to be displaced. The mayor said there will be some people displaced. We have an average income, per capita income of $28,000 in this city. The rents are almost what they are in Providence, Rhode Island, and the average per capita income in Providence is $71,000, which is 2.5 times more than it is in Fall River. So you know what this article says about you? If you're a regular Fall Riverite and you're feeling the crunch and you're going to get kicked out, tough shit. That's what it's saying, okay? And now I'm not on BCC, so I can say it. Tough shit. This article is the biggest distortion of reality. This is another election year propaganda tool. Kenny Fiola is telling you how great it is. Kenny Fiola is the guy that said that the carousel was going to bring in 500,000 tourists. And I was at the meeting, Kenny. I was on the board of Heritage State Park when you said that. That was going to save Fall River. That carousel, we're going to bring thousands and thousands of tourists here. And Mark Sullivan, who ran CFC and rest his soul because he passed away, looked at you and said, you got to be shitting me. You're going to tell me that Derby horses, which is our old name for the carousel, that's what we used to call it at Lincoln Park, are going to bring 500,000 tourists in here. You're nuts. And he was right. This, again, is the elitist attitude because you don't count. As Bobby Dylan said in Like a Rolling Stone, you're invisible now. You got no secrets to conceal because you got nothing. You got nothing and you got nothing to lose, which is the next line in that song. But that's what you got. This article is pure bullshit. That's what it is.
I guess you made it very clear where you stand. I've got that article in front of me here, and I want to make a couple of corrections, not to the article, but to my statements. In Fall River, the average one-bedroom apartment is $1,675 per month. A two-bedroom averages $1,942 per month. However, rent for a Fall River studio apartment averages at $1,475 a month, which is more expensive than Brockton and Providence. And the thing that gets me in this article, which, by the way, as you said, was written by Jo Goode, the propaganda machine, as it usually goes. Fiola said there are three types of tenants looking for market rate housing in Fall River. Empty nesters who want amenities and convenience to shop, restaurants, and doctors, young professionals, many of whom work outside of Fall River, and city renters looking to upgrade their housing. Historically, there has been little choice for them. Now they have choices, said Fiola. I think the real driver of the market is once the rail comes in, from an overall economic perspective, the people coming in will have higher income levels and spend more money. Unlike the landlords coming in and buying multifamily units and raising rents that many renters can't afford, no one is displaced.
Which is an absolute lie. We've got volumes of Facebook posts about people getting bumped out of their house.
That's
so I
right.
just did something. 1,673 for a one bedroom. So if a single person gets a one bedroom, it's $20,076 a year. The average median income in the city of Fall River is $28,000. So they've got $7,000 and change left to do everything else: eat, pay their car insurance, pay their grocery bills, electricity, heat. They're going to live on $7,000, which is less than $1,000 a month, $250 a week to eat. If you have a grinder, which costs $10 every day, that's $70 out of your $250. Now you're down $180 to pay everything else, gas, everything else. This is absurd. Fiola lives in his elitist alternate universe. Somebody is going to upgrade in Fall River, that third category? Are you kidding me? If you got enough money to afford that rent, you probably already own a house in Fall River and you're bitching about the taxes. I mean, this guy is look, he's been full of crap for the last 40 years. He was full of crap on a carousel, and he's been full of crap about everything he promised to fix Fall River, including bringing a whole bunch of jobs, because we saw the lists of the cities whose jobs have increased in a percentage of 2, and we were not in it. So you're going to get young, upwardly mobile professional people to move into Fall River with 10 cities, number one in crime, an educational system that will not educate their children and cannot educate their children because they're 335th out of 351 cities and towns, and they're going to move here rather than move somewhere in between Boston and Fall River, including the suburbs. You know, they're building market rate housing in Swansea and Somerset. You think that a young, upwardly mobile professional might want to live in Somerset, where the average per capita income is like $81,000? The crime rate is virtually non-existent. Their educational system is competent. No, they won't do that, can they? They're all coming to Fall River. They're all coming to Fall because they don't have any other choice. The only people who don't have a choice in this equation are the people that you're screwing to the wall, because this drives up the rent everywhere, and we've seen it. This is a blue-collar town. You need affordable housing, and you guys don't even talk about it, and you lie your ass off, because this is displacing people. And I got a whole bunch of things right over there in a folder about people's rent. And I told you on the last show about the kid at McDonald's that was working overtime because his rent just went up to $19.25 a month, which is virtually $24,000 a year. A kid that's working at McDonald's has got to pay for rent. How much money you think, how much discretionary cash do you think he's got? How much discretionary cash do you think that he has to pump into the income to open retail businesses and stores here? Zero. But you don't care about those people because you're collecting your nice $45,000 fee, and you're making, I'd like to see your tax return. To hell with Trump. I want to see your tax returns.
Let us know exactly.
Look, you want to talk facts? Let's talk facts. You want to talk bullshit? Go read the newspaper.
That's it. That's it. It's, you know, it's very interesting to see how for years, as you said, this man has been responsible for economic development. Yet Fall River, over 40 years, still hasn't moved anywhere towards valued economic development.
Well, he's taking care of himself, CJ, and we know it. Yeah. That's all they ever do. Because look at Pleasant Street. When he took over, Pleasant Street was full. When he took over, South Main Street was viable. This guy's been in charge of this in one form or another for 90% of that time. Take a look around and see how effective he is. The only thing he's effective at is lining his own pockets and all his friends' pockets. That's all he's successful at.
Well, and, you know, the interesting thing that we need to look at is people aren't going to come here from Providence or Boston to live because we lack something that those communities have. And that's the nightlife. They have clubs, they have bars, they have restaurants. Okay? They don't have, you know, they're not pushing events like one time, you know, Fall River Pride at the Tom Norton Pier. Okay? The food truck festival down at the gates of the city. The every third Friday event down at the gates of the city. That's not nightlife. Okay? People want nightlife. Even in Newport, as small as it is, okay, and with several of the bars that were open at one time have since closed, they still have a nightlife. And if you had a choice between going to Fall River for a Portuguese steak or going to Christie's in Newport for whatever type of steak you wanted and a nice community and things to do, as opposed to going for a Portuguese steak and getting mugged when you come out of the restaurant or getting mugged while you're in the restaurant. What would you rather be? Where would you rather go? Hell, I'd rather go to Bourne or Hyannis, and they have some high crimes there. But I'd rather go to Bourne or Hyannis. It's the Cape. There are things to do. There's nothing to do in Fall River, and this is why we have high crime.
Yeah. No, you're right, CJ. And you know, the reality is there are communities that don't have a lot of nightlife, but those communities, see, these people they don't drill down into it and look at the variables that create these types of communities. You look at Newton. Newton doesn't have a hell of a lot of nightlife because these are all extremely high-paid professionals. It's a bedroom community, basically. It's a city where they're short distance from Boston. They can travel into Boston, or they have the ability to go anywhere they want because the average household income in Newton is $164,000 and changes, say $165,000, as opposed to $49,000. It's a bedroom community because it's proximity to Boston. All of those satellite communities around Boston, like Wellesley and stuff, they don't have a lot of nightlife, but they have a lot of affluent people who then can jump in their car and drive to Boston in the evening or go anywhere they want because they have the financial ability to do it. Communities like Fall River, even if they, the reality is that Providence has got things. They've got Federal Hill, you've got all types of restaurants, you've got all types of nightlife. Newport's got the Tennis Hall of Fame, Thames Street, Brick Alley, the 12-mile drive, Cliff Walk, the beaches. They've got, Newport has got a lot of things to do. But the people who are permanent residents there, that's a factor, but it's a highly overblown factor because people with enough money to go do these things are mobile enough and rich enough to afford to go wherever they want to be entertained. I mean, you want to go to the theater, you can go to the theater district in Boston. You can go over to PPAC in Providence, which is a really wonderful theater. I've gone there a whole bunch of times to see some great plays. But people go. You can get in your car and drive. A community is about a place where people live. And some people, Boston, obviously you live in Boston, you don't want to drive around much. So it's nice to have all those things where they can just, take a cab or walk or do whatever they want and get there without driving around and looking for parking places. But it's a different kind of community in these communities. We have Newton, which is a bedroom community. Fall River has to attract people who, they're working people too, but they forget that class. They think we're going to get all these other people that inhabit places like Wellesley and Newton and stuff, and they're all going to race down here. And again, that's like saying the carousel was going to be a great tourist attraction, and all it was a thing that fell into disrepair. And not that it wasn't a nice thing, but not that many people are going to go cuckoo and jump off the highway to go ride a wooden horse. And again, a tactical, maybe intentional misreading of their positive effect. But Kenny doesn't care. Kenny's been collecting a big fat paycheck for 90% of the last 40 years. The only person whose life has gotten better since he's been in charge of economic development is Kenny Fiola. Look at Pleasant Street. I rest my case. Look at South Main Street. But remember, I grew up in the Flint. I walked Pleasant Street my whole life. I used to walk up there and there was stores. There wasn't an empty store on Pleasant Street because people were working. Rents were affordable for a blue-collar community. And the housing crisis, contrary to that Spin article, is more prevalent in Fall River. It's just the opposite of what that article tried to, the bill of goods that article tried to sell you. Because, as that article said, the national housing crisis is in the news daily. In the news daily everywhere except Fall River. Because Fall River will not use the word affordable. The affordable housing crisis is as bad, if not worse, than the rest of the country. The crisis they are talking about is an affordable housing crisis because the rest of the country is suffering from inflation. It's suffering from overpricing of everything. Uncontrolled spending of the federal government, just like they are in Fall River. This is election propaganda. And shame on not doing their due diligence and making that clear. That Fall River has an affordable housing crisis, and this tries to dismiss that. So I'll tell you what. Why doesn't the Herald News go to the United Faith, who had a big meeting about affordable housing? Why don't they go to the Flint neighborhood, who had a big meetings about affordable housing? They pretend it doesn't exist. That's what they do. Crime, shut up. Don't talk about it. You don't see it. Nobody talks about it. It doesn't exist. Nobody will realize that. No matter how many Facebook posts about cars being shot up, cars being broken into, people being displaced from their house. Just shut up and sell them the pie in the sky. Here comes the giant apple pie. Everybody take a slice. Go down there to the food truck and stuff your face and realize that Fall River now is going to be a great place for you to live. It's not. It's going to be a great place for what they think is going to come down here to live, because they don't give a damn if you're living in a tent. And that's the reality.
I want to remind you, remember the condominium boom that we had in Fall River back in the 80s, and how everybody was going to live in it?
Yep.
You know, we got some great comments from our friend who calls us knobs, Jim McKinney. He says, "Don't forget the Narrows." We haven't forgotten the Narrows, but the Narrows doesn't offer entertainment that a lot of people participated in. Otherwise, the Narrows would have moved to a larger venue.
Oh, yeah, the Narrows is a great thing, Amoeba. Look at all the thousands of people that flock down to the Narrows.
Yeah,
because it's so wonderful. And it really fits the population. It's like building an opera theater in the middle of NASCAR country. How many people are you going to get, at the opera and when you're in NASCAR country? It's about knowing your audience. And the same thing when you open up a business. What's the first thing a business does? They sample the population and see if the business is viable in that location. But that's far beyond your intellectual capability to figure out. The Narrows. Yeah, the Narrows. Okay, they got a little entertainment. Yeah, that's why the doors are busting out. All the people that can't pay their rent are running down to the Narrows. You got to look at things in their totality. This is a crock. It's always been a crock. You pay attention. It was it's ridiculous what the bill of goods they try to sell the people, because the reality is they don't care about that segment of the people. They don't care. And it says it right in front. Nobody's being displaced. What city are you living in, Kenny? Nobody's being displaced. Why do you see the homeless population growing? Why do you see more people in tents? Why do you see people on Facebook complaining? Why do you see people getting ready to lose their homes over all the taxes? This is the whole key. This is what this election is about. The ostrich approach that we pretend these people do not exist, and they do, because it's not my opinion. It's not your opinion. The United States Census Bureau says we have nearly 20% of this community below the poverty level, living in poverty. 20%. That is 1/5 of the population. 1 out of every 5 people who live in the city of Fall River is living in poverty. So you think driving up the rents throughout the city, because that's what happens. Hey, the guy across the street's getting this. You think it's good for the city? Well, you have a right to that opinion. But I don't think that opinion, look, like you said, we saw the condo boom. I saw a market rate housing boom too. They built market rate housing down on the north end and up around Duval Street. I told you that story before. Where Stop and Shop is on Rodman Street. I'm sorry, Duval, Rodman. You've got that plumbing place. You got a whole bunch of stuff now there. But there was about 5 city blocks that they built affordable housing, and they had some down the north end. You know what happened to those things ultimately? They couldn't fill them up. They closed them all down. They became derelict, and they burnt them all down. I know, because I went to fires there every single night on Rodman Street because I was stationed in the south end. They burnt those things down, and we put them out, and until they burnt them so badly they had to be destroyed. And then they bulldozed all those things. You don't think they built market rate housing in Detroit? And look at what happened to Detroit. They couldn't sell a house in Detroit for $1. You got to understand economics. And also, you have to look at the population. Capitalism is based on charging what the market will bear in order to survive as a business. The housing market in Fall River cannot survive with predominantly market rate housing. The city is going to collapse. It's that simple.
I think that's
an economic fact.
I think that's the whole purpose of this market rate housing boom, and how it's supported by Paul Coogan and Ken Fiola and the parties that be, because they want to change the economic structure. And it said it in that story that by bringing these people down from the Boston area will result in people who have a higher income, because they think that those people spend that higher income here. That's not necessarily true. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. And is there a mayoral? Here's a question: is there a mayoral candidate that can solve the city's problems? If they put their mind to it, they can work on it.
Well,
I'm sure.
Not overnight.
That Paul hasn't tried. The problem is that Paul hasn't tried, and we haven't heard anything from Mr. Vandell on what his positions are on things.
Well, CJ, let's make it perfectly clear. We're not Pollyannish. We're not like Kenny that dreams of a city full of Newtonians walking around the streets of Fall River, because that's never going to happen. And I'm a betting man. He's got a lot more money than I do, but let him give me some odds, and I'll throw a few dollars on the fact that it ain't going to happen. But the reality is, you're right. It will not help, because you know what supports small business? It's like I said, it depends on a community's demographics. What supported Fall River? People worked in the mills. They walked to the nearest corner store. They shopped at the stores in their area. They shopped at these types of businesses, and they kept them afloat. You think some rich yuppie is going to go down to the 7-Eleven or the corner store to do something? They're going to jump in their car, and while they're going over to Providence to go to P-PAC, if they even lived in Florida, which I don't believe they will, you think they're going to stop and support small local businesses? And for the reality that these people never ever will tell you, you look at any economic study of cities like Fall River, moderate to smaller cities, the primary driver of their economy is small business. And we've seen over the last 40 years, small business virtually evaporate in the city of Fall River. On the last show, we just talked about Pacheco Furniture closing.
Right.
So this is what happens. You do not have this. And is anybody going to fix it overnight? No. But I can tell you what, we might, if we get some counselors and some people in who say, hey, listen, you want to build market rate housing, go ahead. And then they'll be empty, and you'll end up leaving town like they did before in the 70s and 80s. And they'll be derelict. Well, we need to build affordable housing to keep the people that live in Fall River and give them a roof and train these people to work, give them skills like they did in Rhode Island when they went and trained people to weld, and they all got jobs, high-paying jobs at Electric Boat. It's not something that can't be done. Will it be done overnight? But the first step is something that this city council and this mayor absolutely categorically refuses to do, and that's stop spending money. They will not do that. He's using ARPA money, and when that's gone, this city will be in receivership within 2 years.
And when that's gone, Paul will be gone. Well, I want to thank you all for watching, and remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Monday with our special guest, City Council candidate Paulo Amaral. Thanks for watching. Have a good weekend. Stay cool if you can.